The Supreme Court of the United States is going to hear a Second Amendment case, and we're going to talk a little bit about Thomas Sowell, and I have a lot to say about that. Welcome to the Bald Brad Show. Before we get into our lead story today, please take a moment to hit that like button. It does help the YouTube algorithm push my video out there to viewers who have not seen my content or my channel. And if you enjoy the Bald Brad Show, please make sure you hit the subscribe button, but also the bell notification button so you're notified whenever we go live, which is every Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And for our lead story of the day, it comes from our friends over at the Daily Wire. If you're not already a subscriber, please go over and become a member today. It is written by Beth Bauman, and she titles it, "An Upcoming SCOTUS Case Could Be the Biggest Win for Gun Owners in a Generation." So this is going to be a lot of me reading, and so hopefully you're one that tends to listen to the show, maybe rather than watching it. But I think this is important because it could push the Second Amendment even further for having our right to protect ourselves. So it's going to take us through previous looks at what SCOTUS had decided on, and then it's going to take us through this new one. And bear with me, as many of you might be able to tell, I'm pretty under the weather, which is why we're only doing one story. And it's honestly, it's a pretty slow news day, so it's kind of a good thing. But I wanted to do a show regardless of whether I'm sick or not. And to give you perspective, I worked today, and it just as the day went on, I felt more and more ill. I don't think it's COVID or anything like that. Just, simple head cold. But came home, slept for 4 hours, and really, really worked myself up to record this episode. And the reason why I wanted to do it is this show is really important to me. And I think it's important that whether we're sick or not, that we get our conservative values out there for young men and young women, and even for older men and older women, so that we can constantly better ourselves, including myself. But I don't want my sickness to hold me back from doing the show, because I wanted to do this show for 5 or 6 years. And if you watch my very first episode, I was just too scared to come out and do a show like this because I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to lose my career. I enjoy doing those things, but this is highly important to me. So please bear with me as I'm going to really push myself to get through this episode here. But I really do appreciate all of you sticking with me as I go through this episode, even though I'm sick. So let's start off here. Beth says, the Supreme Court of the United States on Monday announced they will be hearing the first Second Amendment case in more than a decade. The case, New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Parler, and hopefully I'm saying that correctly, or else I'm going to be saying it incorrectly throughout the entire episode, will force the court to decide whether or not Americans can be forced to prove they need to carry a firearm for self-defense. Under New York law, a person must apply for a permit to carry, but he or she must prove proper cause exists. The same thing they have in California. You basically have to prove why you should be able to carry a firearm out in public. Where other states don't require this, it's pretty much the dominant leftist states that require this proof of cause. So it says here, New York is a may issue state. So you have proper cause and then may issue states. So New York is a may issue state, meaning it's up to local law enforcement agencies, generally sheriff's departments, to determine whether or not a person's need to carry a firearm is valid. The case is a follow-up to 2 other landmark Second Amendment cases, McDonald versus Chicago, and this one you probably heard of that's coming up next, District of Columbia versus Heller. So that Heller one's actually pretty famous one for Second Amendment. I'm sure many of you at least heard the name Heller, maybe not necessarily the District of Columbia versus Heller. But let's talk about the Heller decision a little bit here. So to kind of refresh your memory, in 2008, landmark Heller decision, the Supreme Court ruled in a 5-4 decision that the Second Amendment protects an individual right to possess a firearm unconnected with service in a militia, and to use that arm for traditionally lawful purposes such as self-defense within the home. D.C. Special Police Officer Dick Heller, and forgive me, I'm going to lose my voice, brought the case before the court because he believed the district's gun control laws were unconstitutional, and the time D.C. prohibited residents from possessing handguns and carrying unregistered firearms. Heller applied the registration but was denied. The reason DC prohibited handguns from being registered. The other area of concern was the district's law requiring gun owners to keep their registered long guns unloaded and disassembled or bound with a trigger lock unless they were utilized at a place or business or used for recreational activity. Isn't that crazy? That you have to have it disassembled? What good is it at that point? It's just pieces of metal and wood just like sitting around. You're better off probably using a knife than anything else, but that's nuts. Isn't that just man. It's quoted, "As we have said, the law totally bans handgun possession in the home. It also requires that any lawful firearm in the home be disassembled or bound by a trigger lock at all times, rendering it inoperable." That is from Justice Antonin Scalia. Rest in peace. That was one of the great Supreme Court justices. So he wrote that in a majority opinion. As the quotations earlier in this opinion demonstrate, the inherent right of self-defense has been central to the Second Amendment right. The handgun ban amounts to a prohibition of an entire class of arms that is overwhelmingly chosen by American society for the lawful purpose. The prohibition extends, moreover, to the home, where the need for defense of self, family, and property is most acute. And absolutely right. Under any of the standards of scrutiny that we have applied to enumerate constitutional rights, banning from the home the most preferred firearm in the nation to keep and use for protection of one's home and family would fail constitutional muster, he concluded. So that was the Heller decision that basically allows you to have the firearms within the home to protect yourself. So, and not just that, but it's also the most preferred firearm in the nation. So right now it's the AR-15, and that's why you have the right to use the AR-15. Democrats on the left want to ban the AR-15. As to why they want to ban the AR-15 compared to firearms doesn't solve the issue of mass shootings, because once you get rid of the AR-15, you're going to have some idiot and evil person out there go commit mass shootings with a firearm or with another long rifle, something of that. There's different types of guns out there. They all do the same thing. They all shoot somebody. And you know what's weird to me is they bring up like the velocity of the bullet, as if that's good. Like you're going to matrix yourself like Keanu Reeves. Like you're going to bend backwards past the bullet, or you're going to be dodging bullets based on a differential of velocity. Isn't that just silly? Like, but whatever. Doesn't make sense. I just don't have the energy in me to make too many jokes. But right now, we're going to talk about then the McDonald decision. And no, it's not Ronald McDonald, okay? It's a different McDonald decision, but it says the 2010 landmark McDonald decision reaffirmed the Heller decision. The Supreme Court concluded in a 5-4 decision that the Second Amendment right of individuals to keep and bear arms in self-defense applies against state and local governments as well as the federal government. McDonald challenged Chicago's gun control laws that were similar to those addressed in the Heller decision. The city of Chicago and the suburb of Oak Park argued their gun control laws were unconstitutional because the Second Amendment doesn't apply to states. The High Court disagreed. It's quoted as saying, "We have previously held that most of the provisions of the Bill of Rights apply with full force to both the federal government and the states. Applying the standard that is well established to our case law, we hold that the Second Amendment right is fully applicable to the states," Justice Samuel Alito wrote in the majority decision case or opinion. Now here comes, so we had the Heller decision, we had the McDonald decision, and I want to recap those because you're going to see those come up a lot within debates, maybe with your friends and leftists. You're going to have them come up with Joe Biden talking about the Second Amendment, or Kamala Harris, the Supreme Court. So it is important to have kind of a generalized picture, which is what I gave you, of, again, the Heller decision and the McDonald decision. But now we get into the Corlett case here, and it's this. When looking at concealed carry permits, there are two types of states. There's a may issue and then a shall issue, okay? So again, there's two types of states, may issue and then shall issue. According to NPR, in a handful of states, California, Delaware, Hawaii, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Rhode Island, and New York, a person applying for a permit to carry must prove they have a need to carry. Isn't that kind of mind-blowing to you that we have a right to bear arms, but you have to prove to the government your need to carry a firearm to protect yourself? Why? Why does the government get to decide if I get to carry a firearm or not when I'm there to protect myself, and I have every right based on the Second Amendment to do so. And it says there, comma, you cannot infringe, right? Infringe. That's exactly what they're doing. And somehow the left and the Democrats don't get that through their thick skull. But, you know, they're constantly trying to incrementally remove that Second Amendment. And once you incrementally remove that over time, it's not going to happen in 50 years. It might not happen in 100 years. It might be 150, 200 years. By the time the Second Amendment disappears, that's why you don't even get to touch it. You're going to lose that First Amendment as well. So we should all be watching out for what happens with this Corlett case here, because the hope is Supreme Court rules in our favor, but you never know because it's been close decisions, 5-4 for a very long time. The hope is that Trump's picks here go our way and end up advocating something that is good for the American citizen, where we have a right to protect ourselves. The states should not get to decide that. That is not their right to decide whether we get to protect ourselves or not. That is an overreach of power of the federal government and the state level government. Based on the applicant's reasoning, local law enforcement agencies can approve or deny an application, even if he or she passes a background check and has an understandable need. The remaining states are shall issue states, meaning a local sheriff will approve a person's permit to carry concealed as long as he or she passes a comprehensive background check. Some states have other requirements like taking an instructional class and passing a range test. As long as those requirements are met, the applicant is granted a permit to carry. In the Corlett case, two of the petitioners, Robert Nash and Brandon Koch, were denied carry permits because of New York's may issue stance. Nash, for instance, requested to carry a handgun for self-defense after a string of robberies in his neighborhood, but he was denied because he did not demonstrate a need or a special need for self-defense. That is just mind-blowing to me. If you've had a string of robberies in your neighborhood, you're damn right that's a pretty darn good need for self-defense, because who's to say, might be a small chance or not, but the cost is too high if you have a robbery that might be armed or a robber coming to your house that might be armed. Now your family's in danger. That guy shoots up your house, maybe your family, your children, your wife, whoever's in there, and you have every right to defend yourself. And so you're seeing over time the federal government reaching too far over. They have way too much power. Every year, the federal government and state governments are getting too much power, and it's constantly inhibiting us as a citizen of the United States and our constitutional right to bear arms. It's constantly being infringed upon. I don't care what the left says. I don't care what the Democrats say. Incrementally, they are doing it, and it's clear as day. And that is why you have so many cases here being brought up by the Supreme Court. We shouldn't have any cases being brought up by the Supreme Court based on the Second Amendment, but we do. And again, that shows you the attempt to limit the Second Amendment, and as time goes on, to do away with the Second Amendment. It's case in point. It's right there in the pudding, right? That if you have cases like this, you have the Heller, McDonald, and now the Corlett case, this is an attempt to infringe on your Second Amendment rights. The petitioners argued that the Second Amendment protects a person's right to carry a firearm outside of the home. They believe New York's proper cause tramples on their Second Amendment rights, and I agree. A small minority persists in denying the right to typical law-abiding citizens instead of reserving self-defense rights to the small subset of individuals who the state deems worthy. They argue New York is illustrative. It curtails fundamental individual self-defense rights. The governmental insistence upon a unique showing of need ignores the Second Amendment broadly guarantees rights to all the people. Well, why does this matter then? Like, what's the big deal about this case and utilizing Heller and McDonald? Well, the case could have a dramatic impact on a number of states, especially gun control havens like California, New Jersey, and New York. And this is why it's a big deal for me, because I live in California. I would like a firearm and carry around a firearm to protect myself and my family, especially as the show gets bigger over time. And by the way, we're almost at 1,000 subs. We should hit it either tonight or tomorrow. Thank you so much. Hopefully we can come up with a new goal for the month of May and really work together to grow together as a channel. Guys, this channel is just as much as mine as it is yours. Granted, I do run the channel. I kind of run everything about the channel. So, I mean, it is mine at the end of the day. But, your viewership is greatly appreciated, which is why I'm trying to make it through this show extremely sick, because I care that much, not just about the show. But I want to show all of you that I'm serious about this show, and I will continue it for a very long time. And I'll do everything in my power to make sure I upload every Monday through Friday, if I can. I'm barely making it through this one. So, should the court follow prior precedent and rule along the lines of Heller and McDonald, Second Amendment rights could be expanded for millions of Americans. And that is a great thing. That's exactly what we want, where our rights are being expanded upon and not infringed, not limited. And that's constantly what the left and the Democrats are trying to do. So I can't wait for them to hear this case. I am a Christian. Hopefully there's a lot of Christians, Catholics, and even other faiths that watch this show. It doesn't have to be just Christian or Catholic. But my hope is that we can all pray for a good decision here so that we have the right to protect our family. We have the right to bear arms. We have a right to conceal and carry whenever we would like so that we can protect our life, liberty, and our property at the end of the day. But the left does not want to understand that. Now, because there's not a lot of news and, well, Bald Brad ain't feeling so hot today at all, meaning right when I'm done with this show, I'm going to go edit it and go to sleep. I wanted to talk a little bit about some books that I read. I brought up a couple Thomas Sowell books. Thomas Sowell is one of the greatest influential thinkers of our time. He's my number one man in terms of who I read, where I get a lot of my information from, a lot of my philosophy from, is Thomas Sowell. So I have a lot of his books, and I kind of want to talk about two of the most important ones for right now. I think this is the one I'm about to say is the most important one to start off with, and it's called The Quest for Cosmic Justice by Thomas Sowell. You can get it in hardcover or paperback. I think it's critical for your reading. It's worth the money. It's a pretty short book. It's not a long book, but I just want to read the opening for you here. This book is about the great moral issues underlying many of the headline-making political controversies over our times. It is not a comforting book, but a book about disturbing and dangerous trends. The Quest for Cosmic Justice shows how confused conceptions of justice end up promoting injustice, how confused conceptions of equality end up promoting inequality, and how the tyranny of social visions prevents many people from confronting the actual consequences of their own beliefs and policies. Those consequences include the steady and dangerous erosion of fundamental principles of freedom amounting to a quiet repeal of American Revolution. The Quest for Cosmic Justice is the summation of a lifetime of study and thought about where our society is headed and why we need to change course before we have irreversible damage. It's so hard to talk right now, forgive me. But this is a great book. It definitely has applicable narratives in it, applicable studies to what we're dealing with today, and how basically the idea that somebody is going to infringe on everybody else's rights for the sake of a specific group is going to end up harming everybody at the end of the day. And so there's a constant push by the left and the Democrats for this social justice, this cosmic justice, and what you're doing is you're actually causing more harm than you're causing good. So it's a great book, very applicable. And then last episode, I talked about this book here, which is called Discrimination and Disparities by Thomas Sowell as well. This book will equip you in terms of disparities, will equip you in some sense of statistics, as well as discrimination. And he goes over the different types of disparities. He goes over the different types of discriminations. There's like type 1, type 2, and then it even flows into subsets as well. So this to me is these two books are a must read. If you want to destroy people in conversations, or if you just want to have a very intellectual thought based on disparities, based on discrimination, this is a must read. It is very short. You can read it in one day. But it says here, discrimination disparities challenges believers in such one-factor explanations of economic outcome differences as discrimination, exploitation, or genetics. It offers its own new analysis based on an entirely different approach and backed up with empirical evidence around the world. The point is not to recommend some particular policy fix, but to clarify why so many policy fixes have turned out to be counterproductive, and to expose some seemingly invincible fallacies behind many of those counterproductive policies. The multiple and sometimes mutually contradictory definitions of discrimination are sorted out, along with the varying costs of discrimination to the victims, to society, and even the discriminators themselves, and the consequences of those costs in affecting behavior in different economic institutions. The role of chance and the pitfalls of statistics, even when the numbers themselves are accurate, are pointed out as factors in misunderstandings of the causes of disparities in such things as income, education, and outcomes in the criminal justice system. This book is not only about economics, but also about public policy and social issues. And it has everything to do with what the left is trying to do today, where they'll see disparities within statistics and they'll shout racism. They'll see disparities in statistics and they'll shout discrimination, because there just must be, just because of the disparity. And so it covers that on the education, income, and social issues. It is a phenomenal read. If you could pick up any book by Thomas Sowell, he's written a lot, you're going to be doing yourself a great service, and you're going to know vastly more about those concepts, those influential ideas that he talks about, than a heck of a lot of other people. But folks, that is all the news I have for you today. Please forgive me for becoming ill. Hopefully I am better for tomorrow's episode. It was a struggle to get through this one, so thank you for sitting tight with me as we go through this SCOTUS Second Amendment case, as well as these Thomas Sowell books. Please make sure you leave me a comment. Hit that like button. If you enjoyed the Bald Brad Show, please make sure you subscribe. And folks, I'll see you tomorrow here on the Bald Brad Show.